I am a bilingual writer. I write in Tamil and I also write in English. My profession is that of a historian. I am a researcher, I am a professor of history. So I do a lot of academic writing. But despite that, even when I do academic writing, I try to write in a way that would interest an average, intelligent lay reader. So that is primary to me. I want to communicate without compromising on what I believe is the duty of a historian. So that is one thing. Then I write extensively in Tamil. I also write in English. My most recent book is called The Province of the Book: Scholars, Scribes and Scribblers in Colonial Tamil Nadu. Very briefly put, this is a book about books. It had a very interesting genesis. It was conceived originally as a PhD thesis, but even though it originated as a PhD thesis, it did not address academic interests. It in fact tried to address very different questions. I have grown up all my life as a reader. As a young boy, I was very poor in sports. If I played cricket, I would be out first ball. If I played tops, my other friends would just massacre my top. So I was a very poor player, and I sought refuge in books. Reading books created a different world for me, and all through my life books have been my sustenance. So when I pursued my PhD in history, I thought I should study something that is very close to my heart. So I thought of writing a history of books, book production, book cultures, publishing of books, reading of books. So it is a cultural and social history of books in South India from the late 19th century up to the middle of the 20th century. The questions that I were very interested in was this. Many people do not know that books were published in India nearly 500 years ago, which is basically within 100 years of the very first book being published in Germany by Gutenberg. So not only that, the very first book to be published in India was a Tamil book. So now it is going to be more than 450 years since the first Tamil book was printed. Not only that, the very first dictionary, the very first translation of the Bible, the very first encyclopedias, they were all published in Tamil. So I wanted to explore this very old history. Towards this end, I started looking at old records, but more importantly, I had a very important question. This was about say 15-20 years ago, when Tamil publishing was not thriving. Now in the last 10 years or so, Tamil publishing is actually facing a boom. If you right now go to the Chennai Book Fair, you will see 500-600 bookstalls selling Tamil books. Now you find that Tamil writers are prominent, they are getting more media space, and there are actually some Tamil writers who make a living by writing. This was not so 15 years ago, 20 years ago, and that is one question that I wanted to explore. So towards this end, I did an exploration of middle class culture, because middle class is what sustains book publishing. So I tried to make a link between the weakness of the Tamil middle class and the very stunted growth of Tamil publishing. The other aspect that I explored was how readers are formed. The common sense notion is that the moment a book is published, somebody will pick it up and read. It doesn't happen so. Readers have to be created, and readers come from various social backgrounds. There is a history to it. Then the other aspect is reading is not done in the same manner all over the world. Each society has its own way of reading books, absorbing books, contending with books, collecting books. Basically, I could say that book cultures vary from society to society. So I think the very important part of my book is that it maps a clear history of book cultures in India, especially in southern India. The other dimension which was very important to me was that this was published by probably one of India's very best editors, Rukun Advani, who has edited major writers in India. In fact, somebody who discovered the genius of Ramachandra Guha. I was fortunate that my book was edited by him. So, the provenance of the book is probably my 23rd or 24th book, but in terms of the experience of being edited, I think it was a new experience. But this is also framed by a larger concern. In the last 10 years, people have talked about the imminent death of the book. Day in, day out, prophets of doom, Cassandras are telling us that books will die. I think my book makes an intervention in this debate as well. I do not believe that books will die. If books will die, it means humanity will die. I think books will change. The form of the books will change. The way it is consumed will change. Of course, the way it is marketed and distributed this will also change. But I don't think books themselves will die. I don't think publishers will die. I don't think editors will die. They will live, and as long as books live, I think the world will be a very nice place to live in. Even though book publishing originated in India in the mid 16th century, it was only during the Raj. It is during that period that book publishing flourished. Why it flourished in that period and not earlier is also part of my work. As I said, you need a middle class. You need an ascendant middle class to have a vibrant book publishing scene. The middle class in India is born only during the Raj. That is when books get published in significant numbers, and that's when book cultures thrive. There is a second reason for why I chose the period of the Raj. This is a very sad reason. If you want to look at books published in India 125 years ago, you will be hard put to find many of these books in any Indian library. Indians have a appalling record of maintaining books. Our libraries are in very bad shape. Our academic institutions do not care for old books. So we have destroyed all our collections. So if anybody wants to look at old books, they need to go to London, they need to go to Edinburgh, they need to go to Hala, they need to go to University of Chicago Library, they need to go to the Library of Congress. In fact, the best collections of Indian books, pre-independence books, you need to go to UK. Post-independence books, you need to go to the US. This is the bitter truth, but it is the truth nevertheless. And as a student, I did not hope to have access to libraries abroad. So I chose a period when books published during that period would be available in India. It was only subsequently I was able to look for these books outside India, and I was both amazed, happy and sad to find that our patrimony, our cultural patrimony is safe abroad rather than in India. See, the period the modern period is a rupture. It is a rupture not only in terms of social conditions, but also cultural conditions. Historically, if you look at Tamil literary tradition is very old. Not only is it old, it is a very continuous literary tradition, unlike other literary traditions with the exception of Chinese. I think only Chinese can rival Tamil literary tradition in terms of both antiquity and continuity. But even when talks about continuity, we have to remember that many changes take place. Originally, the earliest writing in Tamil society, like other societies, was primarily in the oral form. Oral poets, bards used to compose. Even though writing was available as a technology, literature was not communicated through the technology of writing. Only later writing comes. And even when writing comes, first writing is used for bureaucratic purposes and for official purposes. It is used to declare endowments in stone inscriptions and copper inscriptions. It is only much later that palm leaves are used to preserve literary writing. But with the coming of the British, here we have to make another contrast. In North India, paper comes by about the 11th, 12th century with the coming in of Islamic cultures. Islamic cultures, apart from many other things, Islamic culture brings in paper. And paper, very interestingly, even though it is more fragile than palm leaf, paper can disintegrate much faster than palm leaf. Very paradoxically, paper survives longer than palm leaves because it is lighter, simpler, and it is easier to roll or fold or whatever. But paper does not make deep inroads into South India. It is only when the British come, and a little earlier the Marathas in Tanjavur also use paper. But paper as the primary modality of writing is less than 200 years old in South India. So that is the primary difference. Paper in its strain is also a very democratic form because palm leaves are more expensive because they have to be processed before they can be used. Paper, once it is produced in a mass manner, it becomes cheaper. Palm leaves cannot be processed in a mass scale, paper can be. So paper has a democratic potential inbuilt within it, and when something becomes democratic, it brings in talent from all over. The bane of Indian culture has been that historically the intellectual resources of the vast masses of India have never been tapped. Writing, culture, everything has emanated from the upper sections of the society, which means that it is impoverished because it has not tapped the potential intellectual resources of a vast section of the Indian people. With the coming in of paper, with the coming in of new forms of modern education, with democratic politics, I think the intellectual pool from which Indian culture draws from is very wide. So just to add one more point, the reason why intellectual culture is thriving and kicking in India in the last few decades is that new sections of the people are coming. You can't go and tell somebody coming from a backward caste or a scheduled caste that the novel is dead, so don't write it. They are going to say, no, we have started learning only now, we have got the pen only now, publishers are available only now, literary festivals are being opened up only now, I will write a novel. Who said that the novel is dead? So I think that is another reason why I think we need not mourn the so-called imminent death of the book. Yeah, this is analogous, but at the same time the social classes who got into reading and writing during the Raj days, they came from a very restricted social class. They were Brahmins and upper caste, and they came from the urban areas. They were brilliant men, very few women, brilliant men. So that is another issue. Even now, a very small proportion of women have come into the literary field. In the coming decades, it is going to increase. So that is another reason why I think Indian writing will flourish in the coming decades.